Hello and welcome to my channel. This is episode 7 in the West of Eden series. The helicopter is already prepared, fine-tuned by our talented engineer De Bruyne. All we have to do is set the collective to fly, and wait for the engine to reach the right number of revolutions per minute so that we can take off. Today, we will fly from Raron to Sion, following the course of the Rhone River. Once in Sion, we will climb the Bernine Alps, something we haven't done for several episodes, to explore the area around Crans Montana. In doing so, we will also visit the Wildhorn and the Plaine Morte glacier, before descending to the valley and finally entering the capital of the Valais where, among other things, we will visit the castles of Valère and Tourbillon. To tell you about the places we are going to visit today, and perhaps also for future episodes, we will avail ourselves of the advice of Professor Leon de Zarosa, a leading expert on the area we are about to fly over. Welcome, Professor de Zarosa.
Happy to make this flight with you, Aldocat. And best regards to those watching.
Professor, how is it going with the helicopter? Is everything okay?
For me, the helicopter is not a usual experience. However, I must say that it is better than I feared when I agreed to go on this excursion.
Professor, flying over the Rhone I noticed that, constantly, the river is bordered by at least one row of trees. How come?
The presence of trees along the banks of the Rhone in Canton Valley has several reasons. Trees along rivers create a habitat for many species of fauna and flora. They provide shade that can help moderate the water temperature, thus benefiting aquatic life. In addition, trees and vegetation along river banks help stabilize the soil and prevent erosion. The roots of trees hold the soil firmly, preventing it from being washed away during floods. They also help reduce pollution. Trees can also help improve water quality by absorbing excess nutrients and filtering pollutants. But there is also a reason for recreation and beauty. Trees along the Rhone add beauty to the landscape and provide shady areas for recreation. The Route du Rhone, for example, which runs from Le Bouveret on Lake Geneva to Brigg, is a popular cycle route that runs along the river through the canton of Valais. Thanks to the trees, cyclists can always find some coolness both along the route and when they choose to take a break.
Thank you, Professor. The way you said it all seems so obvious, but certainly not all rivers are so bordered.
We can also avoid you calling me Professor. I would say that Leon is more than enough.
Okay, Prof. Leon. I momentarily abandoned the Rhone to fly over Turtmann airbase. Please, what can you tell us about this airbase?
Turtmann airbase was first used in April 1929 by Flieger Company 8. During the Second World War, many of the structures that had been built were replaced in the 1950s. The hangars and ammunition bunkers were replaced with the first cavernen bunkers dug into the mountains next to the airport. To allow the use of Venom jet fighters, the runway was lengthened first to 1,200 meters, then to 1,500 meters. The mountainside bunkers were completed in 1958. The extension of the runway and the siding was completed in 1965 with the completion of the northern siding. The military base is closed today. One of the most obvious reasons why Turtmann had to close was its proximity to civil life. Planes would practically fly through the city, and it was not uncommon for traffic lights to turn red to allow fighter planes to cross the road.
Something similar has already been seen in Ulrichen in episode 3.
In 1989, the airport was refurbished in preparation for the 1990 Wiederholungskurs, an emergency reactivation exercise of the Swiss Defense Force. 1,000 meters of runway were completely rebuilt and QRA, quick reaction alert, facilities were constructed. However, in July 2002 it was announced that Turtmann would become redundant after the Wiederholungskurs in March 2003.
Thank you, Leon. I apologize for the overlapping with my voice, but I had actually already seen this thing about planes and traffic lights when I stopped thanks to a special permit at Ulrichen Airport. Now I am heading back to the river and soon we will arrive in Leuk. What can you tell me about Leuk?
Firstly, I would like to point out that so far few vines have been seen. From Leuk onwards, however, everything will change and vines will be the most common crop we will see. As for the rest, I will tell you when we fly over the city. Leuk has a long history, dating back to the Celtic and Roman periods, as evidenced by isolated grave finds with poppy needles, fibulae and belt hooks from the Latine period. In the 6th century, Leuk belonged to the crown of the Burgundian king Sigismund, who donated it to the Abbey of St. Maurice. In the Middle Ages, Leuk was one of the most important places in Upper Valais, thanks to its strategic location on the communication routes between Brigg and Sion. The Romanist Celtic population of Leuk was gradually Germanized towards the end of the millennium by the immigration of the Alemanni, but a strong Romanesque minority was still present in the 14th century. Leuk retains an architectural and cultural heritage of great value, including the Bishop's Castle, renovated by architect Mario Botta, who added the now famous glass dome to the crenellated tower, its towers, including the Ringacker Chapel, the old Weissdomini Castle, now the Town Hall, and the unplastered Parish Tower, one of the most beautiful examples of Romanesque bell towers in the Valais.
Very impressive, Leon. But what about the economy? Actually, as you said before, I see that vineyards are now everywhere, apart from the forest on the left bank of the Rhone. Do people live off agriculture here?
Today, the importance of agriculture in Leuk's economy is great, but equally great is the importance of tourism. On the left bank you can see the Pfyn-Finges Nature Park, about which if there is time I might tell you later. Leuk is also a very important spa area. In particular Leukerbad, which is located high above the Dalla Valley, of which the ancient Romans already knew about the therapeutic virtues of the hot waters. Here, this is the Dalla Valley.
And what can you tell me about the Pfyn-Finges Nature Park?
The Pfyn-Finges covers quite a large area. It stretches over 13 municipalities, from Gampel to Sierre, and offers a wide range of landscapes, from the rushing Rhone River to glaciers, from flower-filled meadows to imposing rock faces. So Trialdocat, imagine you have just arrived in Pfyn-Finges. The sun is shining high in the sky and the air is fresh and clean. You find yourself in a flowery meadow, an explosion of color that leaves you breathless with its beauty. The scent of wildflowers fills the air and you cannot help but feel wonder and admiration for the nature that surrounds you. Continuing along the path, you enter a wooded area. The shade of the trees offers pleasant relief from the heat of the sun. The sound of the wind blowing through the leaves and the chirping of birds give a sense of peace and tranquility. As you explore the park, you occasionally stop to observe the wildlife, which is very diverse here. Each new sighting can give you a thrill, a chill that runs down your spine. Finally, the Rhone. The sound of flowing water is powerful and relaxing at the same time. Sitting on the riverbank, you can reflect on the beauty and fragility of the ecosystem that surrounds you.
An experience I will definitely try as soon as I can. Thank you for this wonderful description of Pfyn-Finges. Meanwhile, we have already arrived in Sierre. What can you tell me about Sierre?
Sierre is a sun-kissed valley town, delightfully nestled in the hills and surrounded by vineyards. Viticulture and culture occupy an important place here. Sierre is also an ideal starting point for numerous excursions thanks to its central location. Sierre lies at the crossroads of the German and French language borders. The Romans called it the City of 100 Hills. The sinuous reliefs all around the center form an idyllic backdrop that was dotted with castles and fortresses, which were soon surrounded by hamlets that agglomerated over time, giving rise to the town of Sierre. The richly decorated town hall and the picturesque Rue du Bourg, lined with historic buildings including the 17th-century St. Catherine's Church, formed the heart of the town. Older is the elegant Château de Valère, founded in the 15th century, which includes a massive tower now used as a private residence. Many artists and writers have fallen in love with Sierre over the years. Among the best known is Rainer Maria Rilke, who lived here from 1921 until his death in 1926. One of the city's most important museums is dedicated to him. The surroundings of Sierre constitute one of the most important wine-growing regions in Switzerland. First and foremost, the landscape itself is a masterpiece, a perfect synthesis of nature and human skill. This is in fact one of the most important areas in Switzerland, embroidered with vineyards glistening in the sun, from which fine products such as fendant, made from the white Chasselas vine, is one of the most illustrious ambassadors of the Valais. Its equivalent among red wines is the Dole, mostly made from Pinot Noir. To get to know and taste these delicious nectars, there is nothing better than a visit to the Valais Vineyard and Wine Museum, which is divided into two buildings linked by a vineyard path. Leisure and relaxation are guaranteed at various times of the year. Daredevils can watch and take part in the Mahler Cup, a famous gathering of paragliding enthusiasts, which fills the skies above the town with colors and breathtaking evolutions in January. August is the liveliest time of the year, with the Rilke Cultural Festival dedicated to the famous writer, the Sierre Blues Festival and the Disco Festival, which, in addition to the flea market, offers many entertainment shows for young and old.
Wow, the next holiday will be in Sierre, no doubt about it. Thank you once again for passing on so much culture. But, I don't know how to ask you this, is everything perfect here? There must be some little problem, something wrong or in need of a tune-up.
Oh no. It is certainly not all perfect. Besides, as you yourself say, here we are west of Eden, not paradise.
I love this, Professor.
On what needs to be sorted out, let's say, the first thing that comes to mind is the problem of the abandonment of vineyards. For some time now, some vineyards have been selling for a token price because it would appear that they are no longer as profitable as before. For a long time, the vineyard yielded well and many people were active there alongside their normal employment. Then it began to yield less well and people started to rent it out to professionals. Today they no longer need it, because wine consumption is falling and with imports remaining stable, Switzerland produces more grapes than it can sell of wine. The least profitable vineyards, those that are smaller and less automatable, are being abandoned. Some rows of vines are likely to be grubbed up by the authorities, who intervene where the owners do not move. Otherwise there is a risk of disease spreading. Many owners let time go by because they hope to be able to sell for a better price, but this is unlikely to happen. In the 1950s there were not so many vineyards in Valais. Afterwards there was a boom and many fields were turned into vineyards. Some people think there is a risk of going backwards. Perhaps some plots will become fields for other crops that might emerge, or in some places there will be a return to nature. This, according to those who think so, in any case does not mean that Valais winegrowing is dying, but that it has to shrink a little. There are too many vineyards in relation to what is consumed and what can be produced, and that within a few years a new balance will form. Others, on the other hand, are fighting to defend a sector that, thanks among other things to the typical landscapes it creates, has a not inconsiderable tourism component. The organization Valais Vine and Wine Association, for example, has proposed a series of measures to the State Council, including doubling direct payments. In fact, the branch fears that in the medium term, 1/5 of the vineyards could disappear, with the entire supply chain likely to suffer a major setback, including wine tourism.
I like you, Leon. I like you as a professor, because you make me see things from more points of view, but I also like you as a person and I hope we will soon become friends. So you can take this as an official invitation for the next episodes. And in the meantime we are already on the outskirts of Sion. I can already see the suburbs of Clodevy and La Glorie. But it is already some time since the hills with the castles of Tourbillon and Valeria are unmistakable to the eye. What can you tell me, briefly, because we will not go into the city right away but come back to it later, about the history of Sion?
Briefly, I can tell you that, in terms of human settlement, Sion is one of the oldest cities in Europe. The oldest remains of human settlement date back to the Mesolithic period. And already in the Neolithic period, the first farmers from the Mediterranean areas settled here. Its development took place mainly during the Celtic and later Roman period. The name Sion derives from the Latin Sedunum, itself derived from the name of the Celtic people who lived there, the Seduni. The rest of the story when more time is available.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. As mentioned in the introduction to this video, we arrive but don't enter the city straight away, only after taking a tour of the Bernese Alps. For now, after passing by the castles of Tourbillon and Valère, the stadium, also called Tourbillon, which has enough capacity to accommodate almost half the local population, I would like to ask you to tell me about Sion Hospital.
The hospital in Sion is a reference health facility for the Valais and the neighboring regions, offering high-quality and specialized services in various medical fields. The hospital is also the subject of an expansion and redevelopment project, which includes structural and functional interventions to increase the efficiency and safety of services. Sion Hospital has a fundamental impact on the economy of the city and surrounding areas, both directly and indirectly. Directly, the hospital contributes to job creation, income generation, and public spending. Indirectly, the hospital encourages the development of other related economic activities, such as the hotel, tourist, commercial, and transport sectors, and improves the quality of life and health of the population. According to a World Health Organization estimate, health systems are an important component of any economy and a major source of employment. In the case of the Sion Hospital, the number of direct employees can be estimated at around 2,000, including doctors, nurses, technicians, administrative and other staff. In addition to these, there are indirect employees who work for companies supplying goods and services to the hospital, such as construction companies, cleaning companies, pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, etc. It can be assumed that the number of indirect employees is 20% of the number of direct employees, so approximately 400 persons. In total, the hospital in Sion generates approximately 2,400 jobs, which corresponds to approximately 5% of the city's working population. Sion Hospital also has an indirect impact on the economy of the city and surrounding areas, as it generates additional demand for goods and services from employees, patients, and visitors. This demand translates into increased turnover and employment in other economic sectors, such as hotels, tourism, trade and transport. It can be calculated that the economic multiplier of Sion Hospital is 1.5, which means that for every franc of income generated by the hospital, 1.5 francs of income is also generated in other sectors. In conclusion, Sion Hospital has a significant and positive economic and social impact on the city and surrounding areas, which is manifested through job creation, income generation, public spending, development of other related economic activities, quality of life and health of the population. The hospital therefore represents a strategic resource and a factor of attractiveness and competitiveness for the territory.
Indeed, I wonder how tourism, particularly tourism based on winter sports, there are many ski resorts here, could develop without the presence of a hospital.
That's right, it simply would not be possible.
But already we have to change the subject. In front of us is St. Leonard, home to a new wonder, although we cannot show it.
Yes, a true natural wonder, an underground lake. Only farmers in the Swiss canton of Valais near the town of Sion knew of the existence of an underground water source in the past. The population of St. Leonard, a village of about 2,000 souls, dedicated to the cultivation of grapes and a long-standing producer of wine, used it to chill bottles of fendant, which, as we have seen, is the most famous wine in the Valais and only produced in these parts, in what was initially thought to be a simple puddle. Instead, it was the gateway to one of the most marvelous places in Europe. We are talking about Lake St. Leonard, the largest underground lake in Europe, formed thousands of years ago but discovered less than a century ago. The current entrance to the immense cave where the lake is located was practically inaccessible at the time, as it was completely invaded by dense vegetation. One fine day in the spring of 1943, however, something unusual happened. The water level of the lake dropped, revealing a real underground cave. The Swiss Speleological Society was alerted and immediately sent two of its experts who, with an inflatable dinghy, organized the first exploration of the lake. The experts were thrilled. In addition to discovering the immense cave, it was the subterranean lake with waters as clear as ever that left them speechless. It would have to wait until 1949, however, before it could be accessed. Today, instead, it can be visited comfortably on board a rather large boat, which can carry up to 40 people. The experience lasts half an hour. Only one limitation: it is forbidden to dive into the water.
Not being able to see an underground lake from the helicopter and having to reach the Wildhorn, I entered the Vallon de La Lienne, a tributary of the Rhone.
The Lienne is a much exploited river. Its waters, stored behind the Tseuzier reservoir, which we will certainly fly over, located in the municipalities of Aachen and Aient, feed two hydroelectric power stations. In addition, the Lienne feeds the Bis de Sion upstream of the Tseuzier lake. Lower down, it still supplies water to the Bis Silenen and the Bis Claveau or Clavaz. Parallel to the latter, in its lower course, it feeds the Bulet power station, near which we passed earlier. The river has its source at the Rawil Pass, at an altitude of 2,429 meters. Perhaps, after visiting the Wildhorn, we will also pass through there, but I don't know if we will be able to see it, near the border with the canton of Bern. As you just said, when it reaches the plain, it joins the Rhone near St. Leonard at an altitude of 495 meters. All around us is an expanse of forest. It all looks the same, but don't let that fool you. Geologically, the two sides of La Lienne are very different. On the right bank, to our left, there is a moderately steep forest where you can still venture. On the other side, it is steeper and dotted with rock walls. In any case, and I take advantage of the fact that in front of us we now see the Aachen sawmill, forestry has always been a great resource for the inhabitants of any alpine region. Historically, wood has always been a fundamental resource for the local economy, and the exploitation of the forest has always provided employment for many people. The forest is considered a fundamental element of the mountain landscape and, as we have seen with the Pfyn National Park, has attracted tourists to the mountains for centuries. The forest is also a strategic resource for hydrogeological protection. It functions as a great sponge that retains water and filters it into the aquifers. In addition, a forest stand prevents further hydrogeological disruption and erosion. Responsible forest management, which can include activities such as sawmilling, for which we hope to do an excellent job, can contribute to the overall health of the forest and, consequently, to its ability to perform important functions such as hydrogeological protection. On the river again, just now we flew over a small barrage. Soon we will see a much more conspicuous one. These are hydroelectric power plants. The citizens of Valais, and the Swiss in general, are very much in favor of hydropower. Moreover, there is a growing demand to promote indigenous energy sources such as wind, hydro and solar power. Indeed, they well remember that Switzerland already experienced an energy revolution a century ago, when coal imports from abroad ceased after the First World War. And in the current geopolitical situation, having domestic energy sources could prove crucial. More on this I don't want to say, because I know that renewable energies, and hydropower in particular, will be the subject of a future episode, and I don't want to anticipate anything. And here we are at the Tseuzier Dam, an arch dam that, at 156 meters high, is the sixth highest in Switzerland. We are at an altitude of 1,777 meters, at the foot of the Rawil Pass, where the Lienne has its source. It drains the Plaine de Roses to our right, then, after a short waterfall, collects the waters of the Tennehet, a small lake that we will encounter, and the Cold Water Gorge, to our left, before entering the Tseuzier Reservoir. Immediately below us, on the right, is the small, partially frozen Lake Tennehet.
We have already reached the Wildhorn Massif. What can you tell me about this famous mountain?
The Wildhorn, the mountain that made history. From here, on board this helicopter, we can admire the beauty and majesty of this peak, which dominates the landscape of the western Bernine Alps. At 3,248 meters, the Wildhorn is the highest peak of this mountain group, which also includes three other massifs, the Meuverens, the Diablerets and the Wildstrubel. These mountains are separated from the rest of the Bernine Alps by the Gemmi Pass, which marks the border between the cantons of Bern and Valais. The Wildhorn marks the border between two different linguistic and cultural regions, the German-speaking Bernese and the French-speaking Valais. This diversity is also reflected in the climate and vegetation on the two sides. The northern side is cooler and wetter, the southern side drier and warmer. The Wildhorn is thus a mountain that tells the story and identity of Switzerland, a multicultural and multilingual country. But the Wildhorn is not only a geographical mountain, it is also a historical mountain. In fact, its name is linked to one of Switzerland's first mountaineering ascents, made in September 1843 by Gottlieb Samuel Studer, a Swiss mountaineer and geologist. Studer, who is considered the father of scientific mountaineering, was a passionate explorer of the Alps, and had already climbed several peaks, including the Finsteraarhorn, Monte Rosa and the Mönch. His goal was to study the geology, glaciology and flora of the mountains, as well as to enjoy their beauty and challenge. To climb the Wildhorn, Studer enlisted the help of two local hunters, Peter and Christian Lauener, who knew the area well. The three set off from Lauenen, a village at the foot of the mountain, and followed the Ifig Valley to the lake of the same name. From there, they climbed up the Tungel Glacier to the main ridge, where they encountered technical difficulties. After overcoming some exposed and rocky passages, they finally reached the summit, where they stopped to admire the view and to collect rock and plant samples. The descent was faster, but not without danger, as they had to cross crevasses and snow-covered slopes. They returned to Lauenen after about 12 hours of walking, tired but happy. The ascent of the Wildhorn was one of Studer's most important exploits, which contributed to the knowledge and appreciation of the Bernine Alps, both from a scientific and a touristic point of view. In 1863, Studer was one of the founders of the Swiss Alpine Club, which today runs the Wildhorn hut, located in the Ifigtal, above the Ifig Sea on the north side of the mountain.
On our right we see the Lienne Valley and Lake Tseuzier, while in front of us is the small Lake Tennehet, which can be seen better from here than on the first pass. Leon, can you describe the places beyond the Tennehet?
We now have before us the Rawil Pass, a mountain pass with a long history behind it. This pass, already known and used by the Romans and medieval merchants, was an important route for the exchange of goods between regions. The Rawil Pass is situated between two imposing mountain groups, to the west the Wildhorn, which we have just left behind, and to the east the Wildstrubel, which reaches 3,243 meters. Both massifs are covered by vast glaciers, which descend to form alpine lakes of rare beauty. Before moving on to the Plaine Morte glacier, I would like to draw attention to a mountain to our left, the Weisshorn. Don't be fooled by the name, this is not the famous Weisshorn of the Bernine Alps, which we have already admired in the 4th episode of this series, but another peak, less high but no less interesting. This mountain, in fact, has a peculiarity. On the summit there is a radar, Floreco, and an air traffic control building owned by the Swiss Army. However, there are no climbing restrictions and the summit can be reached via a marked path from the Wildstrubel refuge or from Point de la Plaine Morte. The Plaine Morte glacier, one of the most spectacular glaciers in the Swiss Alps, stretches out below us. Located to the west of the Wildstrubel, this glacier is distinguished by its flat surface, devoid of locks or other special marks, which in places reaches a thickness of 200 meters. Its waters flow mainly in the direction of Leuk in the Bernese Oberland, but also towards the Rhone valley on the Valais side. The beauty of the Plaine Morte glacier and the panoramic view it offers of the Alps make it a place of outstanding beauty. Finally, the Wildstrubel, an imposing mountain that reaches a height of 3,243 meters. The Wildstrubel consists of three distinct peaks all of similar height, the western peak, called Lenkerstrubel, the central peak, and the eastern peak, called Adelbodnerstrubel or Großstrubel. These three peaks form a 3.5 kilometers long ridge. The entire Wildstrubel massif is a karst area with significant visible outlets. Two important and spectacular springs originate at the foot of the massif, the source of the Sim from the Siebenbrunnen, 7 fountains, at Retzleiberg above Leuk and La Lienne on the Tseuzier in the Valais from a spring that flows directly from a vertical rock face.
Thank you, Leon. As always, you have given me a clear and detailed explanation of the places we are flying over. We are now leaving the Wildstrubel and the Plaine Morte glacier and descending towards the valley following the course of the Tieche River, which originates from the glacier and flows directly into the Rhone after passing through the municipality of Sierre. Leon, can you tell me more about this river and the places we will encounter along its course?
Of course, the Tieche River is a tributary of the Rhone. Along its course you can see typical valley houses with slate roofs and flowered balconies alternating with vineyards and orchards. The landscape is a mixture of nature and culture, of tradition and modernity. Following the course of the river, we will meet Miège, a small village located on a hill overlooking the valley. Miège is famous for its wine production, in particular Fendant, a dry, fruity white wine that goes well with local cheese. Miège is also home to an interesting museum dedicated to viticulture and winemaking, where you can discover the secrets and techniques of this ancient craft. The museum is located in an old 17th century house, carefully restored and furnished with period objects.
Miège sounds like a very interesting place, too bad we can't land to visit it. We head for Crans-Montana, one of the most renowned ski resorts in Switzerland. Leon, can you tell us more about this resort?
Crans-Montana is actually the name of two separate resorts, Crans and Montana, which merged in 1968 to form one entity. Crans-Montana offers a wide range of sports and recreational activities, both in winter and summer, including skiing, golf, tennis, horse riding, hiking and paragliding. Crans-Montana is also known for its social life and for hosting major international events, such as the Alpine Ski World Championships and the World Economic Forum.
As we approach Crans-Montana, I am enchanted by the breathtaking view of the Alps, which stretch from east to west in a chain of snow-capped peaks. The contrast between the white of the snow and the green of the meadows and forests is truly striking. Here we are on the plateau of Crans-Montana, and to my right the view fills up with ski slopes lining the mountainside, reminding me of the tourist vocation of this famous resort. You, Leon, as a historian, what can you tell me about Crans-Montana?
Aldocat, you are right. Crans-Montana is famous not only for its ski slopes, but also for its golf courses.
That's right, Leon. Crans-Montana is known as the Mountain of Golf. It hosts some of the most prestigious golf tournaments in the world.
About Crans-Montana, I can tell you that it has a fascinating history, dating back to the end of the 19th century, when two hunter friends from the area, Louis Antil and Michel Zuffery, fell in love with this majestic plateau and built the first hotel there, the Hotel du Parc. Soon the resort became a health resort for tuberculosis sufferers, thanks to the clean air and mild climate. A doctor from Geneva, Dr. Stephanie, was the first to bring his patients here and promote the benefits of the area. But Crans-Montana is not only health, it is also sport and fun. In 1906, Englishman Sir Henry Lunn inaugurated the golf season by creating Switzerland's first 18-hole course, which is still one of the most beautiful and challenging in the world. Golf is a passion that has involved many famous people, such as Prince Rainier of Monaco, King Baudouin of Belgium, President Eisenhower and singer Charles Aznavour. In 1911, Crans-Montana entered alpine skiing history, thanks to the initiative of Arnold Lunn, Henry's son, who organized the first real downhill race, the Kandahar Challenge Cup, which saw the participation of champions such as Émile Allais, James Cotet and Henri O'Reilly. Since then, Crans-Montana has hosted numerous international skiing events, including the 1987 World Championships, won by Herman Zurbriggen and Maria Walliser, two true Valaisans. Crans-Montana is also a place rich in culture and social life. Here one can visit museums, art galleries, casinos, restaurants, discos and luxury shops. Illustrious guests who have stayed here include writers such as Catherine Mansfield and Roger Vailland, actors such as Jean-Paul Belmondo and Alain Delon, singers such as Frank Sinatra and Dalida, politicians such as François Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl.
Well, once again thank you Leon for your erudition. We now leave Crans-Montana and head toward Sion, the capital of the Valais, where the final part of our excursion to this part of the Valais awaits us and where two imposing medieval castles await us, Valeria Castle and Tourbillon Castle.
Aldocat, don't you see that big white statue on top of the Châtelard hill? It is the Christ King, one of the most famous works by the Valais sculptor André Ramsier. How come we don't stop to admire it up close?
Leon, you are right, it is a wonderful statue and deserves a better view. However, in our authorized flight plan before takeoff, this passage was not planned. We should not approach the statue, which is certainly being visited by many tourists at this time. But, we make a small diversions and descend in altitude to get a little closer, but without exaggerating.
Oh, thank you Aldocat. The Christ King, one of the most significant works by Ramsier, who dedicated his life to sacred art. The statue represents Christ blessing the world with his right hand while holding a cross with his left. Christ's face is serene and peaceful and seems to be looking up to heaven. The statue is placed on a circular pedestal, symbolizing the universality of its message. Christ King is a symbol of faith and hope for the people of Valais, who consider him their protector. The statue of Christ King, which was designed by the architect Maurice Turrettini and the sculptor Edouard Sandoz, was commissioned by the Bishop of Sion, Monsignor Victor Bieler, who launched a popular subscription in 1933 to raise the necessary funds for its construction. It was built between 1934 and 1935, with the help of workers and volunteers, who transported the materials by mule to the top of the hill. Christ King was inaugurated on September 29, 1935, on the feast day of Saint Michael, the patron saint of the Valais. It is oriented towards the Rhone, as if to protect the valley and its inhabitants. The statue of Christ King is a monument of peace and love, inviting everyone to live according to the gospel message.
Really thank you Leon, you have described Christ King in an incredibly beautiful way. The Christ King statue is really beautiful and equally magnificent is your description of it. But now it's time to resume our journey towards the two splendid castles. Leon, I would like to tell you that I'm very happy to have you with me in ideally tracing this tourbillon from Raron to Sion and then up from the Wildhorn to the Wildstrubel and then down to Crans Montana and back to Sion. Because you're a true expert and a very good storyteller. You're making me discover so many things about the history of Valais that I didn't know, and you're making me appreciate its richness and importance.
Aldocat, thank you for these kind words. I'm happy that you appreciate my work and my enthusiasm for the history of Valais. You are an excellent pilot and a nice conversationalist. I'm very happy to have spent this morning with you in this way that is completely new to me.
Thank you, Leon. You know, we saw each other this morning for the first time, but I've admired you for a long time. I got to know and appreciate you by reading the book you wrote on the history of agriculture in the Valais. I must admit that I liked it very much. That is why, when I read on the web that you were in the area, I thought of contacting you to ask you to tell me about the history and the secrets that are hidden in this particular area of Valais, which is your area, the one you have always been concerned with. I could only hope that this experience would not disappoint you.
Aldocat, I don't feel disappointed at all. On the contrary, I'm very happy to have received and accepted your proposal. Just as I'm happy to know that you read my book and that you liked it. I'm glad to know that you are interested in the history of agriculture in Valais, an ancient history full of challenges and successes. I like the opportunity you gave me to fly over this part of the Rhone Valley, which is a beautiful valley rich in history. I'm not very used to being in a helicopter, but I must admit that you gave me a new way of seeing my valley, from a perspective that I didn't know before. You have given me a great gift, Aldocat, and I'm grateful for it.
And I'm grateful to you, Leon, for making me better acquainted with the history of Valais and for making this flight an unforgettable experience. I'm happy to have had the opportunity to get to know you personally. And you know, I would love it if you could also accompany me on the next stages, which will lead to the discovery of other wonderful places and stories in and around the Rhone Valley. What do you say? Would you like to continue this experience?
Aldocat, I don't know what to tell you. I'm flattered by your proposal, but I don't know. I've commitments to fulfill. I must see if these commitments will allow me to be with you in the next few days. I'm sorry, Aldocat, but I can't give you an answer now. I've to check. I'll let you know my decision as soon as possible. But now we are about to arrive at the castles of Sion, and Valyria and Tourbillon are already claiming our attention.
You are right, Leon. There is time to make up your mind. We would miss it. However, now that we have almost reached Tourbillon Castle, can you tell me more about this imposing fortress overlooking the city of Sion?
Of course, Aldocat. Tourbillon Castle was built between the 13th and 14th centuries at the behest of the bishops of Sion, who made it their residence and symbol of power. The castle was destroyed by fire in 1788 and has remained in ruins ever since. However, it is still possible to visit its remains and admire the breathtaking view of the town and valley.
I wonder what life was like for the bishops who lived in the castle. Did they have many enemies to fear?
Well, the bishops of Sion were feudal lords who exercised their dominion over a large part of Valais. They therefore had many conflicts with the local nobles, who aspired to greater autonomy, and with the neighboring Swiss cantons, who sought to expand their influence. The castle of Tourbillon was often besieged and attacked by the bishop's enemies, but they managed to defend it thanks to its strategic position and solidity. The castle also witnessed some important historical events, such as the Peace of Sion in 1476, which put an end to the Valais War, or the Valais Revolution of 1798, which led to the fall of episcopal power and the annexation of Valais to the Helvetic Republic.
Leon, you told me that Tourbillon Castle was destroyed by fire in 1788. How did it happen? Was it an accident or an act of sabotage?
It is a tragic story, Aldocat. The fire was caused by lightning striking the castle during a violent thunderstorm. The fire spread quickly and there was no way to put it out. The castle was completely devastated and many valuable historical and artistic documents were lost with it. It was a severe blow to the cultural heritage of Valais.
So the destruction of the castle was due to accidental causes. But was the fire of 1788 the only one that affected Tourbillon?
Aldocat, the history of Tourbillon Castle is full of dramatic events. The fire of 1788 was certainly devastating, but it was not the only one the castle had to face during its existence. In 1417, during a war between the inhabitants of Sion and the family of Raron, the castle suffered a first fire that caused considerable damage. It was then rebuilt about 30 years later by Bishop William III of Raron. However, the fire of 1788 was the one that led to the most complete destruction of the castle. After this event, the stones of the castle were used for a period for construction in the region, before the ruins were reinforced in the 19th century to make it a historical monument. So, unfortunately, the fire of 1788 was not the only catastrophe that struck Tourbillon Castle, but it was certainly the most destructive.
I'm a little disturbed by this turbulent history with Raron, since that is where we come from. I hope the citizens of Sion will remember William III and not those who came before him. What a pity, though, Leon. I would have liked to have seen the castle full of frescoes. But what can one see today when visiting Tourbillon Castle? Is there anything worth admiring?
Well, Aldocat, even though the castle is in ruins, there are still some architectural elements that testify to its former beauty. For example, you can still see the round tower, which was the highest and most defended point of the castle. You can also notice the entrance gate, which was equipped with a drawbridge and a portcullis. And then, of course, there is the spectacular view from the top of the hill, which embraces the entire city of Sion and the Rhone Valley.
Leon, you made me want to visit the Tourbillon Castle. How do you access the castle? Is there a road or a path to get there?
To visit Tourbillon Castle, you have to walk up the hill on which it is located. There is a path from the center of Sion and it is quite steep, but not too long. It takes about 20 minutes to reach the castle. Once there, you can enter for free and walk around the ruins. There is also a small picnic area where you can stop to rest and enjoy the view.
That sounds like a very interesting hike to me, Leon. What about the Castle of Valeria, which is on the other hill? How do you get there?
Valeria Castle is another must-see gem, Aldocat. It is a fortified complex that dates back to the 12th century and is famous for housing the oldest still-functioning organ in the world, dating back to 1435. To reach Valeria Castle, one can follow another path from the center of Sion, which climbs in the opposite direction of the Tourbillon path. Again, it takes about 20 minutes of walking. Valeria Castle is open to the public. It is also possible to attend the organ concerts that are organized periodically.
I would like to know more about the organ in the castle basilica. You told me that it is the oldest organ still working in the world. How is it possible that it has lasted so long? Who built it and who plays it?
The organ that is in the castle basilica is a true wonder, dating back to 1435. It is a unique instrument that has withstood time and the elements, thanks to quality construction and constant maintenance. The organ was made by an anonymous master, probably of German origin, who equipped it with 45 keys and 1,800 pipes. The organ has been restored several times over the centuries, but it has always retained its original features. The organ is played by professional organists, who in turn offer concerts of ancient and classical music to the public. Listening to the Valeria organ is an unforgettable experience that will make you feel part of a 1,000-year history.
In the Valeria Basilica, besides the organ, is there any artwork that particularly struck you? Can you describe it to me?
I'm glad you asked this question. Besides the organ, another fascinating element of the Basilica of Valeria are the panels of the organ buffet, painted by the Freiburg painter Peter Magenburg around 1435. These panels are a true masterpiece and depict sacred scenes. The left sash features a depiction of the mystical marriage of Saint Catherine, patroness of Sion and Valeria. The image is rich in symbolic details and vivid colors. Saint Catherine is depicted in a richly decorated dress, with a crown on her head, a symbol of her spiritual royalty. Beside her, the infant Jesus hands her a ring, a symbol of their mystical marriage. The scene is set in an idyllic landscape with flowering trees and a blue sky dotted with stars. The right sash, on the other hand, depicts the appearance of Christ to Mary Magdalene, who mistakes him for a gardener. Mary Magdalene is depicted kneeling, her hands clasped in prayer, while Christ, dressed as a gardener, approaches her with a benevolent smile. The surrounding landscape is rich in naturalistic detail, with flowers, trees and birds adding life and color to the scene. These panels were restored by the Kunstmuseum Basel. The combination of music and visual art makes the organ and its panels a unique and fascinating element of the Basilica of Valeria. I hope this description has allowed you to imagine the beauty of these works of art. If you have the opportunity, I would recommend that you visit the Valeria Basilica to admire them in person.
That's beautiful, Leon. I would love to see this painting. And instead, what can you tell me about the Tower of the Castle of Valeria? What was it used for?
Aldocat, the Tower of Valeria Castle is a distinctive feature of this fascinating complex. It stands majestically on the hill of Valeria, dominating the surrounding landscape. Over the centuries, the tower has served several functions. Initially, it served as a lookout and defense point due to its elevated position and sturdy structure. In addition, the tower houses the Valais History Museum, which displays a collection of objects and documents that tell the story of Valeria from prehistory to the 20th century.
I note that not far from Valeria Castle, which is also a basilica, is Sion Cathedral. Are the two sites related?
Aldocat, you make a very insightful observation. Valeria Castle, which houses Valeria Basilica, and Sion Cathedral are two important historical sites in the city of Sion. Both are situated on hills overlooking the city, offering breathtaking panoramic views. The Basilica of Valeria and Sion Cathedral are closely related historically. The Basilica of Valeria was the residence of the canons of the cathedral chapter. They stayed there until the French Revolution. Thus, it can be said that these two sites are linked not only geographically but also historically. Both sites offer a fascinating glimpse into the history of Sion and Valais.
Leon, you told me about Valeria Castle and its historical significance. Now, I would like to know more about Sion Cathedral. Can you tell me something about its history and architecture?
Aldocat, Sion Cathedral, also known as the Cathedral of Our Lady, is another historic jewel of Sion. This major Catholic church in Sion is also the cathedral of the Diocese of Sion. The cathedral has a rich and fascinating history. The present building stands on the site where a Carolingian church had been built in the 8th century. After a fire around the year 1000, a Romanesque cathedral was built in its place. The base of the bell tower and the crypt remain Romanesque. The cathedral was then rebuilt in Gothic forms in the 15th century and later restored to the present day. Sion Cathedral is an example of the Romanesque Gothic architectural style. Its architecture is characterized by sober and light lines. The bell tower with two sundials is a distinctive feature of the cathedral.
Thank you, Leon. Your expertise is truly extraordinary, and although I had a lot of confidence in you and what you could offer me in terms of expertise, I admit that you really impressed me. Now, however, it is time to close this flight. Let's head to the airport in Sion. You know, Leon, when I arrived in Sion, many years ago now, one thing that struck me was to see the writing Province Valais everywhere. I wonder if Province Valais existed back in the days when Tourbillon Castle was still inhabited by the monks.
Having read my book, you asked me a question to which you already know the answer. The monks who inhabited the castle were wine consumers, but not producers. The castle was the residence of the bishops of Sion, who were also feudal lords. The bishops had the right to collect tithes on peasants' crops, including grapes. The bishops used wine for liturgical celebrations as well as for banquets and feasts. Wine was considered a precious and refined beverage that enhanced the bishop's prestige and wealth. Valais wine was already famous and appreciated in medieval times, and was exported to other regions and countries.
Leon, you made my day with your account of the castles and the Cathedral of Sion. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your kindness and expertise. Now, however, I think it is time to land the helicopter. How about we go for an aperitif at some typical places where we can taste the wines and products of Valais?
I'm glad you enjoyed my narrative. I also thank you for your friendliness and curiosity. I think it is a good idea to go for an aperitif at some typical place where we can taste the wines and products of Valais. I know a very nice and cozy place called La Cave du Château. It is located near the castle of Valeria, and it is an old renovated winery that offers a selection of wines and Valaisan assiettes. Would you like to go there?
Before landing, I take a scenic tour of the airport. I think Sion, for its size, has a nice airport.
Sion Airport is one of the oldest airports in Switzerland, having opened in 1935. Did you know that Sion Airport is the only mixed airport in Switzerland where civilian and military flights coexist? Before today, I have never had the opportunity to use Sion Airport, but I imagine that landing here in the midst of these beautiful mountains must be an extraordinary experience.
Sooner or later I will want to try such an experience myself. Actually, before today, I have only arrived and departed from here by train or car. But I think you're right, in the midst of these mountains, flying really gives one beautiful emotions. If you enjoyed my video, please like it. The next episode of the West of Eden series will take place in the mountains that serve as the backdrop for these images. If you would like to know when it will be released, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Special thanks to Leon.